Good morning, everybody, and welcome to today's study of Talmud. We're learning about prayer in the Talmud. This is what the Talmud is to tell us about the anatomy of prayer. We're going to get a little more detailed in how we're supposed to do our personal prayer. Do you have a problem with praying every single day the same template?
Yeah.
It bothers you? Does it bother you that you have to eat every single day the same meals?
No, it doesn't bother me.
You have to every day. You have to eat the same meals: breakfast, lunch, and dinner. Is that like so boring? Every day, the same three. Can we get creative? The template is the same, friends. The template, Velvo, the template is the same. The soul is unique. You don't have to have the same food every single day for breakfast. You have the same template: breakfast, lunch, and dinner. The question is, what do you eat? The question is, with who do you eat? The question is, what are you feeling? What are you thinking? Right? In the same exact way, the template of prayer is 3 times a day: morning, afternoon, and evening. The question is, what are you infusing in those prayers? Let's learn a little bit about the anatomy of prayer before we move on into the psychology of prayer. We're on page 304. The Gemara cited a number of opinions regarding what the 18 blessings and the 19th blessing of the weekday Shemona Esrei correspond to. We learned this in recent weeks. On Shabbos and Yom Tov, we recite only 7 blessings in the silent Amidah. So the pinnacle of prayer, morning, afternoon, and evening, is the silent Amidah, also known as Amidah means standing. We say the prayer standing. Same thing. It's got another name. It's called the Shemona Esrei, which in Hebrew means 18. Why is it called 18? Because it has 19 blessings. That makes sense, right? We've learned about this. It's really good. 18 blessings, plus 1. They added 1 for the self-hating Jews. Then the first and last 3. But on Shabbos and Yom Tov, we only say 7 blessings. You may have noticed that on Shabbos and Yom Tov, we have a shorter Amidah prayer. Why is it that we have a shorter Amidah prayer? Because we don't pray for the same things that we pray in the weekdays. In the weekdays, we pray for all the things that a human being could possibly need. And that's what the sages have managed to encapsulate in the template of prayer, which is things like redemption and healing and forgiveness and enlightenment, right? Those are the kind of prayers, and success in business, health, wealth, happiness, and success, pretty much, right? That's what we're praying for in the weekdays. But on Shabbos, you don't pray for that stuff. On Shabbos, we have only 7 blessings, the first and the last 3 that are the same as the weekday, and a single blessing in the middle. That's the template. That's the anatomy of the Shabbos prayer. The Gemara explains what those blessings of Shabbos and Yom Tov correspond to. Here we go. 7 blessings of the Shabbos prayer. What do they correspond to? Why 7? Rabbi Chalafta ben Shaul said they correspond to the 7 voices that David mentioned in Psalm 29, starting with the voice of Hashem is upon the waters. This is the psalm that we read on a Friday night before Lechadodi. King David's psalms are not just poems, they are spiritual codes. They're spiritual codes. I'll give an example of the codes. Just I'll touch on this one. So it says 5 times when the Torah was given and we entered into a marriage contract between God and the Jewish people, we became the chosen people. What does it mean to become the chosen people? If anybody ever asks you what it means to be the chosen people, it means that God married us. That's what it means. Just like you chose your wife. You chose your wife. Right? That's it. So if somebody asks you, how dare you say your wife is chosen? You say, what do you mean? I married her. That's why she's chosen, because I chose her. There's nothing to be embarrassed of. There's nothing to apologize about that. In exactly the same way, God chose the Jewish people. That was a marriage contract. Now, when God married us, there are 5 times that it says the word koil, kuf vav lamed, which means voice. 5 times it says. He's got the book.
Why is my book different than all other books? Or is this
the same?
You're in the wrong book. You're in number 2.
That's why. Well, that's what's sitting there. It's
Okay,
okay.
it's a trick.
It's one.
So 5 times. 5 times it says the word koil, which means voice, when it comes to the marriage contract in God and the Jewish people. And the way that I teach it is that for thousands of years, we didn't understand why it says the word koil 5 times. Why does it say the word voice 5 times? Is that some sort of a poetry thing? Is that like a rhyming thing? Is that an alliteration? This is when the Torah was given. And modern psychology has discovered that there are 5 love languages. 5 love languages. An amazing book by Gary Chapman. Yeah, that's a different one. I'm just the introduction. So 5 love languages in your relationship, in your marriage. I'm going to tell you what they are very quickly. Quality time, gifts, acts of service, physical touch, and words of affirmation. Those are the 5 love languages. Could it be that the Torah was hinting to that? when it said 5 times the word voice, languages, voice, when it comes to the marriage and God and the Jewish people. That's how I teach it. Anyways, back to here. When it says 7 times the word voice in Psalm 29, which is a fundamental psalm, foundational of prayer, is it just random that this happens to be 7 times that David chose to say the word voice? And that's why in perpetuity till the coming of Mashiach, we therefore have 7 blessings in Shabbos and Yom Tov. It's not random. There are layers and layers and layers of depth beneath everything that we're learning right now. So right now we might be learning on a shallow level of interpretation where it says, 7 times the word voice, therefore we say 7 blessings. But today we're learning on a shallow level, but as we dive deeper in our Torah study, we peel away the layers of the onion to discover ever deeper depths. And when I come across them, I'll be happy to share that with you. The Musaf prayer on Rosh Hashanah has 9 blessings. This is the Musaf of Rosh Hashanah, right? Anybody know what those 3 blessings are called? Those 9 blessings? The standard 3 at the beginning and the 3 at the end, and then the middle ones are 3 famous blessings in the middle of the Shemona Esrei Rosh Hashanah, and they are the Zichronos, which means remembrance, Malchias, which means kingship, and Shofros, which is shofar. The Gemara addresses the basis for the 9 blessings. The 9 blessings, these are the 3 themes of Rosh Hashanah: reminding God of His love for us, crowning God as king over the Jewish people, or king of the world, really, and finally the shofar. Reminding God about the shofar and its powerful blessings for all of us.
We need to remind God of that.
Yes. That's an interesting question, Velvel. Why do we need to remind God of that? Well, let me ask a question. When you pray, why are you asking God for anything? Does God not know what you need? Who knows better what you need, you or God? What do you think?
Oh, God.
Oh, so why do you have to talk to God? Good question. What's the answer? Jack?
More for yourself.
So Jack is going to tell us that the reason you're praying to God is not because God needs to know what you need, it's because you need to know what you need. And therefore, what am I going to do with that information? How's that going to help me?
It's going to reaffirm what you believe.
But how am I going to get what I need? Tachlis, tachas and tish. You know what that means?
Put your tuchus on the table.
You can't translate tachas and tish.
That's what they say when they're bargaining. Put your tuchus on.
What's the bottom line?
What's the bottom line?
Right.
Tuchus off and tish.
So how's it going to help me if I know what I need?
It's because God knows what you need, so you're reaffirming.
I think that
what you need.
I think you're onto something.
Question.
What?
It's a rhetorical question. It's like when God said to Adam,
Where are you?
He knows where he is.
Question is if you know where you are.
Right.
So I
Same
think
here.
I want to extend on what you're saying, Jack, and what you're saying, Rob, is that
We will still refer back to my question,
of course,
whatever it
eventually.
was, wherever it was.
So what I'm trying to say is that I think that the reason we pray to God is not because God needs to know what we need, not even that we need to know what we need as much as that we need to know from where we're going to get what we need. First, you need to define what you need, but more important than that is to know where you're going to get it from. And the fact that you're requesting it from God is already the key to your salvation. You see, as long as you think that I'm going to get my money from my work, I'm going to get my salvation from my political candidate, I'm going to get my victory from my military, you're an idolater. Because you believe that your salvation lies in the hands of mortals. But a monotheist who believes in one God and Hashem Echad, believes not only that there is one God, but believes that there's only one power in the universe. And therefore, everything that he needs, even my teensy-weensy, tiny little details of my life, like my meeting today at 9:30, that it should be successful, that also comes from Hashem, right? So when we turn to God in prayer, it's not that God doesn't know what we need, it's that we need to define what we need, and then we need to know who to ask it from. And when you ask it from the right address, that's when you're most likely to receive it, because it's your Father in heaven. Because God, this world is a game of hide and seek, where God is hiding and he wants us to seek him. And what happens when we seek him? He says, oh, good boy, well done, right? Mission accomplished. So God gives us problems. Remember, God doesn't give us prayers so we can solve our problems. God gives us problems so that we can pray. You understand what I'm saying? God gives us problems so we can pray because he wants a relationship with us.
I think that prayer, though, is somewhat of a catharsis. It's by praying You're letting out your innermost thoughts and your wishes and your
Catharsis.
it's a catharsis of a sort. Because everything you pray for, you don't get. You may pray for healing of somebody who's very, very sick. That person dies anyway. And they pray for other things.
But
you
catharsis,
don't get those things.
but the catharsis that you describe, but the catharsis that you describe has narcissistic undertones. Because if it's all about me expressing my feelings and not about the one who I'm talking to, then what do you need God for? You can have a catharsis all by yourself. Why don't you pray to God? You can pray to yourself. You could just be manifesting. You could just be vision boarding. You could just be.
But who's listening if you're praying to yourself?
Then who's listening? The question is it important to have? The question is,
God, you're under the feeling that somebody is listening to your prayer.
Because prayer is not a recital; it's a conversation, and that's why I say to you, so what was your question again? Your question again was something to do with. Remind me. He asked the question about. Why do we have to remind God? Why do we have to remind God that he should be king of the world? Right. So it's again, remember the three themes of Rosh Hashanah: kingship, making God king of the world. Number two, remembrances and shofars, because God can't make himself king over us. We, the subjects, need to make him king over us. Remember the game of hide and seek? We have to choose God. Number one, that's the most important. Number two, now that we choose God, we have to convince him to accept our job. So we have to remind him about his love for the world, because that's how we crown him as king. And finally, we say to him, shofars, which is salvation and redemption. We say, God, remember, you love us. You got to give us success and salvation, like the shofar, which is what that's all about. So in other words, it's about us having a spiritual chiropractic realignment. That's what it is. Prayer is about us remembering who we are, where we come from, and where we're going. Because it's very easy to forget the mothership. It's very easy to just get lost in zero gravity and remember only your own little orbit and forget the bigger picture. But prayer puts everything into perspective when you remember that I am powerful, I'm on a mission, but I have to always report to the mothership, and I have to get my direction and my success from the mothership in order to be able to succeed in my mission.
Yeah, it's humbling.
It's a very humbling, but yet empowering experience. It's interesting. It's a straddling both lanes. Very, very interesting, right? Very interesting. Now, I just want to tell you that I recently met a person who had no financial worries. This person used to be someone that I very much respected. And I was unaware of his financial situation. And when I recently met this person, and I realized in conversation that the person has no financial worries, it occurred to me that something had died within this person. I know this sounds a little radical, but bear with me a moment. Because I realized it was so counterintuitive to me. It was an amazing experience. I realized that as long as we have a need, we're on our toes, we're performing, we're alert, we're alive. But the moment that you have no more needs, the person ran into so much money, it's like scary. It's beautiful. I mean, good for him. Very happy for him. But the person has no more worries. So what happened was that his sense of motivation was just mitigated to the point of something dying inside of him. And what happened was that I realized that there's a beautiful dynamic that God created within this world, where he creates us with a profound sense of need.
I'm not sure I understand what you're saying.
Okay.
So if I, and I'm guessing most of the people here don't have financial needs, and you're saying that we're not motivated.
Yeah.
We may not be motivated around money, but couldn't we be motivated around other things?
Absolutely. So I was to give an example of of astronomical financial prosperity, but I believe that people have other needs, right? Whether it's health or family or children or relationships or something, right? I was just giving an example that when it came to corporate performance, let's call it that, this person that I very much respected as a leader in his field was didn't have that fire anymore.
Right.
That's what I'm talking about.
And you channeled it in other directions, right?
I don't
Or
think
not,
I don't think that
or
person
not,
channeled
or
it.
not
Yeah, I don't think the
necessarily.
person channeled it. I just didn't get that impression. I just felt like something died. In other words, what I'm trying to say is that when God creates us with a need, like Amy says, purpose is vital. You've got to be shooting somewhere. You got to be aiming, because if you don't know where you're going, imagine you're playing golf, but you don't have the hole. What's the hole called? The hole. You just don't have a hole. We're playing golf. We just don't have a hole. There's no goal. We're just playing golf. What's that game going to look like? Should we stop now? Should we stop later? Should we have a drink? Should we have lunch? Should we take a nap? We're not sure. There's no tension. There's no dynamic.
Is that why they number holes?
Yeah, exactly. It's like progression. Right? So what I'm saying is that, as counterintuitive as it sounded, this person with no financial need was actually at a great disadvantage. When God gives us problems, it forces us to reinvent our spirituality. When we don't have problems, we're not forced into that dynamic.
I don't know. Everybody has problems. Even if you have all the money in the world, you have a different set of problems. What do I do with the money? How do I invest the money? How do I give away the money? What about all the people who are asking me for my money? There's always problems.
Fair enough.
It's how you deal with it.
Fair enough. But this person certainly had problems. I spoke to this person. They certainly had problems. The issue was that with regards to the field of his astronomical corporate success, which was something which inspired me deeply, that part had just plateaued. That part of his life had plateaued.
So one of the things that I see is the people who are successful is that they often try to give their kids every advantage, and the kids don't have the motivation.
That's right.
What you're talking
Trust
about,
fund kids.
They don't have the motivation.
These kids are born with just so much resources. They're just not motivated to do anything. They don't need to work. At 16 years old, this guy's got $12 million, right? He doesn't know what to do with it.
So there's an expression is that the person thinks is born on third base, but thinks he hit a triple.
I'm not sure what that means, because I'm not a baseball.
That's a good one.
He thinks he hit a triple base,
But
he's born on third base. Very nice. Very nice. Where I'm going with this, friends, is what I'm trying to say. The point I'm trying to make is that God doesn't give us prayer so we can solve our problems. He gives us problems so that we can pray. That's what I'm trying to say. Is that don't be afraid of your problems. Look at your problems as being sent to you by God as an opportunity to force you out of your comfort zone. Look at the lobster for a moment. The lobster, it's this ugly little creature under the ocean, forgive me. And what's he doing? What's this cockroach doing on the seafloor? He grows and he becomes uncomfortable. So what happens when he becomes uncomfortable? He's got a problem. Yes, it's a cockroach. What happens when he becomes uncomfortable? Now, he sheds his shell, and that's what motivates him to climb out of his shell and to build a new shell, right? But what would happen if you took a Percocet? Imagine you went to a psychiatrist and he says, take a Percocet every day. He's going to die. That's what's going to happen. He's going to die because he's going to grow and grow. He's not going to feel the pain, and he's just going to not be able to breathe anymore. The fact that we have our problems is not something for us to be afraid of. We have an opportunity to turn to the divine. We have an opportunity to engage the master of the universe. And that is the soul of prayer. Yes, we have it every single day, like breakfast. Every single day, since the day you were born, you had breakfast and lunch and dinner. Oh my God, does that sound so boring? No, it's not boring. The question is, what are you doing with that? My problems today are not even remotely similar to my problems yesterday or the day before. I'm a unique person. And if I'm able to have that vantage point with which I approach my problems as opportunities for engagement, as opposed to fearful giants in my path, then you've reset the paradigm. And that's the beauty of prayer. So in other words, instead of telling your God how big your problems are, tell your problems how big your God is. Let's finish this up, guys. The 9 blessings of the Rosh Hashanah prayer, to what do they correspond? Rabbi Yitzchak of Karatinian said they correspond to the 9 mentions of God's name that Chana said in her prayer. Remember, Chana was the foundation of prayer. We learned that earlier, right? Hannah's prayer for her son Shmuel was her was the foundation of everything we know about prayer. That is her song of thanks to God that she recited after she gave birth to Samuel. 9 times she said the name of God, corresponding appropriate for Rosh Hashanah. Corresponding to those 9 mentions, we make 9 blessings on Rosh Hashanah, and this is especially appropriate for Rosh Hashanah, since the Master said on Rosh Hashanah, Sarah, Rachel, and Hannah were remembered for fertility, and it was decreed that they would bear children in the coming year. So 3 women conceived on Rosh Hashanah. Sarah conceived with Yitzchak, Rachel conceived with Yosef, and Hannah conceived Samuel. All on Rosh Hashanah, a very auspicious night of fertility. On certain public fast days, when there was a drought in Israel, an additional 6 blessings were added to the 18 regular blessings of the silent Shemon Esrei, for a total of 24 blessings. The Gemara explains the basis for that number of blessings. Why 24? You know how many books there are in the Torah, by the way?
24.
You learned that in Booksmart? Good. The 24 blessings of the fast day prayer, to what do they correspond? Rabbi Chelbo said they correspond to the 24 expressions of song that Shlomo, King Solomon, recited when he brought the ark into the Holy of Holies. Shlomo's prayer to the dedication of the Holy Temple. Remember, King David planned the temple, but he wasn't allowed to build it. It was his son Solomon. Thank you. Not Saul. Solomon. Shlomo, who built the temple, contains 24 expressions of prayer, supplication, and song. Now, bear in mind that these connections are not random. It's not like, 24 blessings on the fast day. Oh, there's a matching game here to 24 references of which expressions of song that Shlomo said when he dedicated the temple. There's much more depth to this, and this is what requires Chassidus. Chassidus, which is the spiritual component of Torah, the secret part of Torah, the hidden Torah, is going to eventually, at some point, going to find the connection between Solomon and the fast day, between the Rosh Hashanah and Sarah, Rachel, and Hannah, right? And that's what the deeper components of Torah do. Today, we're learning the revealed part of Torah, and that's very important. You've got to be able to understand the surface level before you can dive deeper. If so, the Gemara asks an obvious question. 24 is a good number, so why don't we do it every day? Only on a fast day when there's a drought in the land of Israel, we play 24. Why don't we do it every day? The Gemara answers, when did Shlomo say them? On a day in need of special mercy. There was a whole story that day. When they built the Holy Temple, the gates of the temple were not opening. Nobody was able to open the gates of the temple. Solomon built the whole temple, but they couldn't open the gates. Se'u sha'arim rosheichem v'hinasu pitchei olam. Lift up your heads, O gates. Se'u sha'arim rosheichem and lift up the openings of the world. Like, let us in. And he asked in the merit of Abraham and Isaac and Jacob and Sarah, Rivka, Rachel, and all the great people who lived before, and the gates are not opening. It was only when Solomon, remember, King David was a very, very, great enigma in his lifetime. King David was very much hated. He said in Psalms, more than the hairs of my head are my enemies. Not your head. 50,000 hairs is typical head of hair, right? That people have, right? 50,000 hairs. He says, more than the hairs of my head.
I don't have any enemies.
There you go. That's a good perspective. Nice way to look at it. See, that's a Hasidic approach. So David was hated by the leader of the Sanhedrin, King Saul, his own father-in-law, was trying to kill him. Right? And it's very, very confusing about King David. It was only when his son Solomon posthumously said, in the merit of David, my father, gates open. What happened then? Bam, the gates open. And now for the first time in his life, after his death, people realized, King David was a great tzaddik. They didn't realize it until then, right? So when did Shlomo say this prayer? Only when he was in need of a great mercy, since the gates of the Holy Temple clung to each other miraculously and could not be opened until Shlomo prayed for mercy. We too, therefore, say them on a day when we are in need of special mercy, not on other days.
I have a question.
Yeah.
When did prayer start and who started it?
Okay, prayer started in the days of Hannah. We learned this a little earlier in the Talmud here. That prayer started in the days of Hannah. Remember, Hannah was praying for a child, Samuel, and she stood there at the Holy Temple in Shiloh. This would have been about 3,000 years ago. It was before the construction of our first temple. And she stood there silently moving her lips.
He thought she was drunk.
The priest was making fun
The
of
high
her.
priest,
He
Eli,
was drunk.
thought she was drunk. And this is the Haftarah we read in Rosh Hashanah.
Right.
Why are you
He didn't understand what she was doing. Who does this? Moving lips without talking, audible sound, right? That was the first prayer. And from Hanukkah is where we learned so many of the laws of prayer. And that's why this chapter that we're getting close to finishing, by the way, chapter 4 of Brachos, we're just a few pages away, by the way, from finishing it, 3 or 4 pages away. We're going to be finishing lots of the foundations of prayer as we're inching our way through this very beautiful study. But remember, folks, that prayer is an opportunity to connect with the divine. Don't get lost in the external component of prayer, like saying, cars are so boring. Cars are so boring. They all have the same steering wheel and they have the same four wheels. It's so boring. Only a fool would say that. Because a car, first of all cars are different. Second of all cars go to different places depending on the day and the time and what's going on. Some cars go to the airport. Some cars go to the amusement park. Some cars go to your favorite people in the whole world. Don't get stuck in the platform. Think about where it's taking you. So yes, prayer is the same template, but put your soul into it. Throw your heart into it. Get under your talus. Think a chapter of Tanya before you start davening. Come to shul early, friends. Don't come late. Make a meditation before you start davening. Close your eyes. Get into a state of meditation. And now you're in an